isto.
Welcome back to 15 Minutes of Pharma. My name is Pereira Cruz, and my partner in these conversations, as always, is Manuel Fernandes. So today we continue our If I Were the CEO series, okay? So in part one, we looked at the site director as the person who joins the industrial system. So the role reaches across GMP, operations, engineering, customers, and the economics of the site. Today, I want us to focus on the person, okay? So companies often speak about experience and potential when they appoint a site director, okay? So Manuel, where would you begin, okay?
Yeah, Carlos, I I would begin trying to understand the complexity that the person has carried so far. Potential can obviously show up through energy and curiosity, together with the speed at which someone learns. And obviously, those qualities matter. But the site also needs judgment. And well, judgment grows when a leader has made difficult decisions and stayed close to what happened afterwards. You know, years of service per se tell us little. Uh, and um, and I would want to understand what the person really owned, how far the consequences traveled, and what they learned when the decision failed to deliver the expected result.
Mm. So Manuel, you mentioned that phrase, um, complexity, own complexity. So this kind of what the person owned.
Yeah,
What does that mean in a site role?
yeah. What I mean with that expression, Carlos, is that the leader should have been accountable when several functions had, valid concerns, and well, at the end of the day, a decision still had to be made. For instance, perhaps a quality issue threatened the schedule while a customer was already under pressure. Maybe a maintenance shutdown had to be protected during a period of high demand. Um, the person has to understand the risks, should a path, and remain responsible for the result. You know, ownership also shows up in quieter moments. For instance, I would try to understand if the leader improved planning by changing the system, or did the team survive through overtime? Did they solve a recurring problem at the source? Could they explain why a profitable looking product was damaging the site? Well, in my view, Carlos, these experiences build judgment because the person sees the operational and economic consequences together.
So how is that different from having contributed to a large transformation program? Hmm?
Yeah,
What's different?
sure. In my view, obviously, a transformation program can be a really valuable experience, no doubt about that. But the question, Carlos, concerns how close the person was to the decision and what followed. Someone may have led a work stream, prepared the analysis, and presented to the steering committee. Uh, Another leader may have implemented the decision while maintaining supply, protecting GMP, and keeping the team engaged. Both people learned something. However, the second carried a wider form of accountability, in my
Hmm.
view. So, when I assess a future site director, I would want to understand that distance.
Mhm. So let's make this practical. What would you ask in an interview in that assessment? Hmm?
Yeah, Carlos, I would ask for a decision that they may have taken that created tension across the site. And then I would stay with the example and try to understand, to dig a little bit dig a little bit deeper, and understand who disagreed with that decision, what information was missing, and which risk did the person accept, and well, what happened several months later. And I would also ask Carlos about a period when performance improved. And I would want to know whether the improvement came from a stronger system or from a temporary push. Demand may also have moved in their favor, and that needs to be separated from the leader's contribution.
Mm-hmm.
And well, Carlos, as we all know, failure tells us a great deal as well. A candidate who can explain a poor decision with precision often gives a clearer view of their judgment than someone who arrives with a perfect career story.
Mm, yeah. Where does technical knowledge, sit in that assessment? One thing is experience, okay. Where does technical knowledge sit
Yeah,
in that assessment?
yeah, Carlos. Yeah, I would say that the candidate needs enough depth to understand the industrial conversation. Of course, the exact background can vary. A pharmacist, engineer, a chemist, or operations leader may all develop the required range. However, what matters is whether the person can connect process risk with GMP expectations, with asset reliability, and with planning and with economics. So, during an interview, I would listen to the questions they ask. Strong candidates usually want to understand the product mix, the quality history, the condition of the assets, the planning process, and well, the relationship with the commercial department. And well, their curiosity shows how they read the system.
Mm, yeah. So, Manuel, family-owned companies often look towards big pharma, okay, when they want to professionalize a site. So, what can that kind of background bring to the company?
Yeah, that's a great topic, Carlos. Uh, I would say that candidates that come from big pharma can obviously bring, strong standards, mature governance, experience of scale, and exposure to complex organizations. And many leaders from big pharma also learn how to work across regions and with specialist functions. uh, I would say that the CEO still needs to understand the scope that the candidate really owned, because in large organizations, they tend to divide responsibility across many layers. So a senior title may cover a relatively narrow part of the system, while some important trade-offs may sit elsewhere. So, Carlos, the curriculum gives you context, and the interview has to reveal the real span of ownership.
Okay. So, and for the mid-size, so what might the leader from a mid-size company bring?
Yeah, that's the other face
Mm,
of the coin. Well, I would say that often they most probably have worked closer to the full business. So the same person may have dealt with, with customers, with capex decisions, with quality events, with staffing decisions, and the product economics behind the plan. Um, in small pharma, decisions travel faster and the consequences are visible sooner. And so that environment can develop a broad view. And it may also leave, but it may also it may also leave gaps in governance or or exposure to scale. So, in my view, the useful questions concern what the person learned and how they would adapt to the new setting.
Mhm. So, Manuel, you have described the site director as an industrial CEO. Is that too strong, or my understanding? No.
Yeah, I perfectly understand your question, Carlos, and I would say that it depends on the company. For
Mm.
instance, in mid-cap businesses, the site director sees most of the forces that that shape value at the site. So they deal with the P&L, with customer commitments, with capital choices, with regulatory risk, and obviously with the health of the whole organization. Obviously, the company CEO owns the wider enterprise. However, within the industrial system, the site director carries a similar form of integration, and that is why, Carlos, in my view, broad judgment matters so much.
Mhm. And another possibility is, can a high potential leader, okay, grow into the role without having honed the whole system before?
I would
Mhm.
say yes, Carlos. It's obviously possible, but the transition must be designed with very carefully.
Mm.
Uh, so, for instance, the person may step into a smaller site first, work under an experienced industrial leader, or eventually take broader responsibility in stages. The point here, Carlos, is that the company should make the learning real, and that means that exposure. It means exposure uh, to taking decisions, receiving feedback, and obviously adjusting course and seeing consequences in function of the consequences of those decisions. So, Carlos, a title alone does not create that experience.
Mhm. Mhm. So, Manuel, if you were the CEO choosing between candidates, okay, with very different careers, uh, at the end of the day, what would you look for? Mhm.
Yeah, I, I, I guess, Carlos, that I would look for someone who can read the site without pretending to know everything. Being humble, I think that is paramount, is essential. Everywhere, but particularly for a site director. So, a site director, they should be comfortable with experts and willing to challenge them. So, I would want evidence that they have made difficult trade-offs. They learned from outcomes. They developed their teams, and that they have built stronger systems. The background would help me understand the person. However, the decision would rest on the judgment they can bring to decide.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think we can do here a break and continue in a part three. Okay, so a part three where we can discuss what the CEO has to change around the site director. So what kind of decision rights, and the working relationship with corporate functions. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think yes, we can do that. So Manuel, thank you, and thank you to everyone listening to 15 Minutes of Pharma. So
Thank
we'll
you,
continue.
Carlos,
Yeah.
and thank
Hmm.
you all.
Yeah.